I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on August 21st, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have independent strengths experts and coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you. On the coach's blog is right below the main video window. Just log in with any account, any social media account, or as a guest. We'd love to have you come in. Best way, really, to get questions into the live show. If you're listening to the recorded version, or if you have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, contact us. Send us an email. It's the easiest way to do it, coaching@gallup.com. Or there's a contact form right on the live page right there. You can send that in as well. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just Gallup-Strengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and StrengthsFinder training needs. You can also catch the video on both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening, a great way to recapture that time in the car, on a train, or in a plane. And Heather, you've had a little bit of that lately. You can catch those past shows and the links to all our mobile apps as well. If you haven't downloaded either our iPhone or Android app, you can get your top 5 right there on your phone. Everything is available on our coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com. Heather Wright is our host today. Heather works as a senior learning and development consultant at Gallup right here on the river from me. Heather, it's always great to have you on Call to Coach, and welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be here, and I mean really good to be here on the riverfront today because it means I made it home last night. So I'm really excited. In all the sessions that I've led and even some of the extracurricular coaching, speaking engagements we've had for Gallup, I've gotten the chance to know Becky, and so I'm excited to be with her. Some of you may recognize Becky, especially if you're in our live viewing crowd. You may think, gosh, I swear she's been on this program before, and she has. But there was a little technological glitch, so it wasn't captured for the ages, and Becky has so much to share that we want to capture and keep in our catalog of YouTube that you can keep revisiting, that we wanted to do it again. And as we were talking about earlier, I have individualization in my top 5, and I didn't even get to interview Becky the first time. So, you know, it's never the same. No two called to coaches are ever the same. No two conversations are ever the same, especially when you lead with individualization. So I am very happy to be here today and get the chance to host Becky. For those of you who don't know Becky Hammond, she is the growth and success maven who started an organization called ISOGO. And we've had lots of fun conversation already today about just looking at that logo and looking at the word ISOGO and how would you pronounce it. It looks like I so go. And I said, to me, it inspired the idea of I so go down the path of my strengths. But ISOGO is, I'll let Becky tell the story about it and about starting her company, but I'm just really excited for you to meet this growth and success maven today and hear her story about what called her to coach. So maybe, Becky, if you want to introduce yourself and the concept of ISOGO and how it came to be as really kind of a little bit of your story, I imagine, about why you were called to coach.
Yep, it definitely was. I like to say that my strengths journey started in my kitchen. I like to say that that it was from conflict that now I'm doing what I'm doing now. And I should share my top 5 talent themes are I say achiever, arranger, learner, belief, and connectedness. And for me, I mean, that's not the order. You know, we get our coaches, we get that all the time. Does this order matter, right? It's like, well, yeah, statistically, that's how it comes out. But for me, that achiever or ranger is really what people see. That's what I'm known for. And then that belief, connectedness, I'm becoming more known for it because people have told me, tell me the why. Like, how did you get here? What was, you say, intellection's in my top 10. Like, you kind of come up with this thing at the end that you're presenting, and then but I don't know how you got there. And so, so I kind of put achiever and arranger at the top. These are the top of the iceberg, and then underneath is this like kind of the why behind what I do, this belief, connectedness, and then learner connects the two for sure and drives everything that I do. So that's my lens that I'm talking to you from today, and so that's how that connectedness is really strong. Like I look back to the kitchen to say, this is where I started. This is where the strengths journey began. Because my husband and I kind of came across StrengthsFinder on a fluke. We were both at the same leadership conference together. And we took StrengthsFinder and I think MBTI as well. And just pretty much instantly started clarifying this conflict that we would have in our kitchen and other places as well, which was since we're all speaking from strengths here, right? Like I have achiever number one, he has relator number one. So I would be, we were dual income, no kids at the time, right? We were dinks. I would come home from work. I would probably be working on 12 different things. I was making dinner, finishing up emails, prepping lunches for the next day. I have a list running through my head. And he would come home and he would grab a glass of water, prop up on the counter, chat about his day, and I'm feeling like, okay, I'm listening, like he's debriefing, he's, telling me the things that have happened to him today and the relationships that, he's impacted and have impacted him. And, maybe at some point I would the kind of the frustration would start to build though, because I'm thinking, man, don't you see the dishes that are on the counter here next to me? Like we could be so much more productive. We could get so much more done if you just jumped in and helped. And he, in the same room, same situation, is with his glass of water, trying to have a conversation with the back of the head, going, man, if you would just turn around and look at me, our relationship could be so much deeper. And so our perspectives were so different. It was the same situation, and as you might imagine, that could escalate, especially if it's time and again and we don't understand the why. It feels inconsiderate, it feels uncaring, on one side or the other. And so when we were able to put language to that, when we were able to say, oh my goodness, I'm coming from this perspective of loving to check things off the list, of providing the drive and the stamina for our family, and you're coming from the perspective of wanting to have that one-on-one connection with us and help our family to get to a deeper level. Like we could say, okay, you're not trying to aggravate me. You're operating from strength, and I don't understand that. And so we just could really open the door for grace and understanding for each other and change that conversation in the kitchen. So I realized, I actually literally, no, you do not see the dishes that are on the counter. I need to invite you into that, and which really he was willing to do if we would work side by side together. We're working next to each other, we're connecting in that way, so that we were getting something done and we're having a deeper kind of connecting conversation that didn't have anything to do with a to-do list for the next day. Right. And so that's really where it all started, and it was a personal connection and a personal entree to StrengthsFinder, and this was about I think it was over maybe 8.5 years ago now. And what I realized was right around the same time, I had the opportunity to actually use my education, kind of MBA and Master of Health Sector Management background. My background is heavy in healthcare. I grew up in a medical family, and I at the time had just been promoted as a manager, a marketing director for an organization actually here in San Diego, where I am right now, to manage a team of basically sales reps. And I was new at it. I had been promoted, like a lot of people who are promoted, because I was doing well at what I was doing as an individual. And as a manager, I was floundering a little bit. I loved the idea, I loved the concept. It wasn't something I was forced into, it's something I wanted, but there's a lot there's a lot of difference between theory and practicality. And so I jumped, as I jumped in, I was kind of grasping for tools, and I started realizing, like, wow, if StrengthsFinder could have such an impact on just this one relationship that I have with my spouse, how could I use this in my work and in my management? And so, I mean, it's like we all talk about now, right? It's like, how do we get two very different people, or 7 very different people, to get to the same outcome? We all have to get to that sales goal. And I like to now call them, affectionately, and actually I think there's a gal on the line who used to work with me there, so she'll know exactly who I'm talking to. I've changed the names to protect the innocent, but Spreadsheet Chuck and Surfer Patrick. And it's like, I had these 2 guys who were so different from each other, where there's one who was meticulous and impeccably organized, and I mean, in some ways, like, almost was hard to get started because he really wanted to be so detail oriented. And then the other one who was so laid back and so casual that if you looked in the back of his car where all of his materials were, you'd just about pass out, because you're like, how in the world are you getting anything done, right? Like, you can see my filter coming through. Discipline's up there in my top 10 as well. And so I realized, like, there was no way that I could, what my boss was telling me was, well, just have them do what you did. But that just wasn't going to work for them. I mean, for Spreadsheet Chuck, it might have worked because there's some similarities there. He would have probably been able to do what I do, what I did. But for Surfer Patrick, no way. Like, he never would have gotten out the door to be effective in his laid back connecting style if he had to make sure all of his spreadsheets were in line and his back of his car was clean, right? And so it was really cool for me to see. And at the time, actually, I didn't even have the StrengthsFinder tool, but rather just asking him questions about strength and energy and draining and being able to help them get there from their own uniqueness and their place of strengths. I mean, I didn't know I was doing it at the time, but what great managers do, right? Like, individualize. I don't know if I've gotten to that level of being a great manager, but at least I was trying to implement
I had
some
to
of those
appreciate
concepts.
that.
It was
really
fun. They had energy, and we had a good connection as a result, as we met one-on-one, and helping to encourage them understand who they were and to make it to those goals. So yeah, that leads me to not to Isogo yet, because I at that point I had the amazing opportunity to move to Japan. We lived there for 3 years. I had 2 of our 3 kids there, and it was really just my connectedness says it was all meant to happen. Like, it was a pause on Achiever for me, pushing the pause button to say, like, enjoy this right now. Savor this with your kids and this experience in this country that we grew to absolutely love. And but as I was coming back, I said, what do I want this next chapter of life to look like? I love this role as parent and as being home with young kids, but I also have this innate drive to do something and give from a different place, from a place of leadership, from a place of connecting. And so I just more and more, especially that last year that we were there, StrengthsFinder kept coming to my mind of, like, if we could really share this tool. I would see relationships, or I would see, my husband's colleagues. I'm like, if they just understood each other in the lens, like, I can see, like, he's deliberative, he's an activator. Like, clearly this is why there's trouble, but they didn't have that tool or that resource. And I just, that kind of kept coming up over and over. And then as I started researching it, realized right around that same time that Gallup was starting to offer their certification. So within a few weeks of being back in the States, I had started the first of the 3 courses, and that was over 2 years ago now, and I am and here I am. So Isogo is the name of the town that we lived in Japan when this idea was born. This idea to help people identify who they are, recognize the strengths in others, and integrate that in work and life. So that's my calling to coach.
So I'm sure people are curious because I introduced you as a growth and success maven. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a growth and success maven?
Yeah, you know, I was telling you, like, words are important to me. They mean things. I was really stuck up on this, like, even coach or consultant or some things that have other connotations depending on what your experience is, right?
Right.
And I also wanted it to be authentic to myself. You know, a title's a title, in some ways, whatever. But if it's going to be something I'm introduced by or something that's on my website or in my brand, I want it to be something that means something to me. And for me, I said, okay, so what are the things that I really do well, that I've always done well, that my talent filter says I will do exceptionally well? And growth is something I've always pursued, and that's that connectedness, that's that belief kind of coming in and saying, what can I do to improve myself? What can I do to invest in other people so that they can grow? And I've been able to draw that out of people, and I've been able to draw that out of myself. And success, I think that's an achiever, a ranger, that combination of just kind of reiterating and pushing forward, where I really have been blessed. I don't think it's all me. I think there's just definitely some blessing in it of being successful in a lot of the things that I have tried to do, and even if I've had to push through failure to get to a place of success. And so I felt like I could offer that authentically to be growth and success. And Maven, that just means expert, a connoisseur, somebody who is highly interested, passionate, and knows a heck of a lot about that topic.
That describes you perfectly. I love it.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I think our viewers are always curious about is, as Isogo has grown and as you've kind of your niche within this coaching, consulting, growth, and success world, what are some of your peak experiences? Where have you had a chance to have impact with your partnerships with others? Tell us a story about a difference that you've made through your coaching.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways that I would like to take this as you're talking. There's one is kind of an experience that I would say is it was one of my first experiences, actually, and it really has given me a foundation for this can really happen. This was with an individual coaching client. And then the other is kind of more from an experience that happened through pushing through a failure. And so I was I'll go both directions there for you and for me. And the first is I was working with one-on-one coaching with a solopreneur, somebody who had been working in the merchandising retail for 30 plus years, and through a variety of different reasons, and small business ventures and working with small businesses, he decided, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to be an independent contractor. And so he's a salesperson. He makes sales calls for a living. And we just kind of had a general coaching session with each other, and he was struggling to kind of have wins every day. And so we, and this is the whole thing about coaching that I think is pretty incredible, is that, like, I don't feel like I did anything. All we were doing was having a conversation about the way he's wired, right? And I'm like, well, it was your idea, and it's your strength. Like, this is your success, but to him, he's like, no, it was that conversation. It was you that did that. It's like, well, thank you, but it's your consistency that did that. So what we discovered was that he had a ranger and consistency, and as a ranger was spending the entire day being super excited arranging his plans, right? Like, okay, he has this huge map and like little pins on it, like these are the people that I'm going to call, and this is the area, and and he would schedule out his entire thing. Well, 3/4 of the way through the day, all of a sudden he's like, oh shoot, I better make some phone calls, And so, and this is where I say it was his idea when we talked about consistency, because he was working for himself, he didn't have policies and procedures to go by. He hadn't written that for himself. And so it was as if he realized he needed to create policies and procedures for himself. And, it didn't have to be prescriptive and written down in a 3-ring binder, but rather, okay, this is how I'm going to spend my day. at least half of my time, I'm going to be actually making calls, so that it kind of cuts off as a ranger. And I have a ranger as well. I absolutely experience that like need for a deadline in order to stop the efficiency spinning, constantly improving things.
Absolutely.
And so he literally doubled his success. Almost instantly. Within the next 2 weeks, he had doubled his success. And it will be almost 2 years ago. In October, it will have been 2 years. And he has consistently been improving and consistently getting wins on an almost daily basis in terms of, his metrics for his sales calls. So that for me has just been one of those experiences, and he loves talking about it, so I also get to hear about it, and I get to not every manager comes back or not everyone I work with comes back and shares with me, but he was so excited about it that he talks about it. So that has been a foundational experience, if not a pivotal one.
And I think it's pretty powerful when people discover that there's that power and edge that can propel their success, and it's inside of them.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's buried so deep inside of us that we aren't aware of it, or we aren't being conscious and intentional about it. We know that's who we are. We know that's how we're wired. We know that's how we think. But we aren't aiming it at the productive outcome that we're trying to achieve. And sometimes just that simple conversation with you, I mean, it is pivotal. It is kind of momentum game-changing for him, because you helped him see some things he already knew about himself, but see it with a new light, a new perspective. It's about creating openings like we always talk about. And wow, just for him to say, oh, if I'm more intentional with my consistency, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and then I think for him especially, he still carries around the little note card that I made for him right after our coaching session that has his 5 strengths written on it, and it has the needs associated with each of those strengths. And he just realized that, like, when he's in a lull or when he's like feeling like something's not quite going right, like which one of these needs isn't being met, and what can he do to kind of help facilitate that need being met. And it's this kind of crumpled up piece of paper in his wallet now, but he looks at it a lot, and to say, like, what is it that's behind these things that I can be more intentional about.
So I'm going to probe on that a little bit. I'm curious, when you talk about you'd prepared something for him, is that a practice that you do with every one of your clients?
Yeah.
And what's that like? I'm sure other coaches would be curious about that. What's your takeaway or giveaway?
The number, coaches know, and actually anyone who's taken this knows, right? Like, if the only way to use your strengths is to remember them, and the only way to remember them is to look at them, right? And so and the only way to look at them is to have them in front of you. And so I, most often, even in my group coaching sessions, I try to leave something with each one of them that is customized to them. And so in his case, it was literally something that I created that was note card size, that had his strengths and his the needs written in there. It was, I did it just through a design program, and did that customized to him. It was something that I mailed to him afterwards, so it was an additional touch point where you have this kind of conversation and an experience, and it's great and it's exciting for both of you, and then, like, who's thinking about it a week later or 2 weeks later? Like, well, I need him to be thinking about it, and not because it matters to me, but because strengths, the concept is only going to be impactful to him if he keeps it at the top of his mind. Right. And so that was a follow-up that I did, and I've done a lot with my individual coaching. And then in my team training, one of my favorite things to do is to provide something, and I know Gallup does something similar with the frames and that type of thing. I found some glass coasters that have inserts that I can create a custom insert for them, so that they have something. It's small, it doesn't take up tons of room. It's not like a fashion statement necessarily, but it's something that can be used as a frame or as some place to put your water on, you know.
You know what? I love that idea of the coaster. I'm going to have to find those, Becky, because I just this morning was in my manager's office, and the humidity here in Nebraska, my glass was sweating all over his desk. I'm like, I need to get you a coaster for when I come to visit.
Yeah,
so
there you go. You can carry yours around, or you can make them for all your friends with all their strengths in them.
There you go. I love it. So you said there was another story you wanted to share about kind of a pivotal client experience.
Yeah, you know, and this one, it comes from, like I said, kind of pushing through failure a little bit. And no one that saw it would think that was definitely a failure. But to me, like, whatever's short of the most awesome is not success for me. And so there were a couple different workshops, but this one in particular, there's a fellow that I'm mentoring in strengths, but that's kind of a joke because he's like a very successful retired executive who has franchises all over the world. But he recently came across the concept of StrengthsFinder, and he has Maximizer in his top 5, which you might imagine. And he's just like, whoa, this is incredible. Everyone that I'm mentoring, because he's an executive coach, needs to know this. And so he's like, how do I do it? I'm like, well, we can just start chatting and we can start working together and let's do it. So I'm mentoring him technically in strengths. Of course, he's mentoring me as well because he's the one with the business executive experience, and he's been on the other side of the table, of somebody who's received the training and and can so as much as he's sitting in to learn from me, I'm learning from him as well. So we were having a conversation after a session, a training session. So it was a half-day session. It was about strengths and sales. And we were having a conversation afterwards, and I asked him, if you were the CEO of this company, what would you have said? What rating would you have given me? He's like, after he said all these amazing things, and they were eating out of your hand, and da-da-da-da, he's like, maybe 8 out of 10. I was like, 8 out of 10? Like, that is not what I'm going for. That's
not what I was looking for.
No, exactly. Like, okay, so what was it? And he's like, well, for anybody, it would be hard to keep the energy up. And so from what I got from that was like, okay, yeah, like, I have Learner in my top 5. I already shared that. I have contacts. I love information. I don't really get bored. I just don't. Like, I just like the information. It doesn't almost hardly matters how, as long as I've gotten enough sleep, right? It doesn't hardly matters how it's presented. Rather, I just kind of like to get it. So for me, it doesn't come naturally to like assess the energy in the room and to come up with like, okay, let's all stand up now, So I would just kind of, maybe even if I sensed people were tired, I just kind of push through. Like, it's like, well, this is good information. They got to know. Like, this is the stuff that they got to grab.
Sounds like an achiever to me.
Right. Achiever, learner, craziness. And and people, I mean, like I said, no one in the room would have said that. I mean, I got amazing reviews on that particular thing, but like, I think I could have handled it better. And so from that, I realized that in my preparation for my training sessions, I need to be intentional about the way that I put exercises together. Like, literally in my notes, I need to be like, okay, stand up and stretch here, or consider a restroom break, or like those types of things where, like, I have a really good friend and colleague, actually, a friend and colleague of yours as well, Erin Passons, who's just like dynamite at this. She's like, okay, 7-minute break. Like, she just gets it. I'm like, oh yeah, are people falling asleep? Oh, okay, like, we should probably
we should do something about that.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, and this is one thing that there's a couple exercises, at least one of these, that I really wanted to share with coaches because I think it's practical. Right. I think it's something that could be a good takeaway if you're actually listening to this. And it's something that I call the star stretch. And a lot of my foundation of the strengths philosophy that I talk about when I kind of do the intro of my workshops comes from, that we've all learned, is about pursuing that star shape instead of the well-rounded circle shape. Just saying, like, our ethos of our society is very much pushes us to be this Renaissance man, this Renaissance woman, but rather the most successful people are, and you know, I have this in my slide deck or whatever, and I'm not using my hands like this, but the most successful people are people who are shaped like a star, where they concentrate on those points and allow others to mitigate for their weaknesses and allow others to come into those weak points. Right. So I talk about that at the beginning. And then, so maybe like halfway through a 4-hour session, and you know, this is where I literally, it's written in my notes, like, consider a star stretch. I look around, I'm like, okay, yeah, we should probably get some energy up. And so I have them do this, and I'm going to stand up, and I didn't tell Jim I was going to do this. I'm going to try to take this microphone with me, but I'm not going to be able to hear you for like a couple seconds. Oh, yes, I can. Never mind. Okay. All right. So I have them stand up, and I don't know if you can even see me here. No, this is not really kosher. But I have them stand up, and I say, okay, like, point your feet out and put both of your hands way up in the air. So they do that. Yep. Yeah, there we go, Heather. Thank you. And so they're stretching out. And I say, okay, give me, stretch them out as far as you can. Stretch them out as far as you can. I say, okay, this is your star. And everyone's like, oh, that's funny. And like, your points in your hands and your feet and your head, those are your points. Those are your sharp points. I'm like, okay, now stretch it out as far as you can. And then I say, now give me 1 more inch. And of course, even if you're stretched out as far as you can always give 1 more inch, right? And I say, that's what we're going for today, is that 1 more inch of your strengths, of picking one thing that you can do to be more intentional about your strengths that you can take away today, that you can use and integrate into your life to become more of that star that you are meant to be and are designed to be. And so not only is it like, it's not just like get up and stretch and do some yoga poses, it's trying to connect it then.
A really good message for people.
Yeah. They're like, oh, I get a lot of head noddings. I did this at Qualcomm the other day with a group of engineers. This was actually a part 1, part 2 series, so I did it kind of towards the beginning where I was like, hey, remember we talked about the circle and the star? Like, and then we started off with that. And there was, some laughter and some head nodding like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And hopefully the physicality helps people remember. Anything that we can do to help make this stuff stick is
That's really right. Well, and I love the piece about we can always get 1 more inch. And with our strengths, that 1 more intentionality, that inch of intentionality about your strengths, think about the return on that, how much more powerful and successful you can be, how much happier you can be, how much, the whole well-being of a human being, not just performance-oriented at work, but even kind of the total person.
Yeah.
What are other tips and techniques? I think that's a great one. I can see next week there's going to be lots of star stretching going on.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah,
use it up.
Becky, while you're thinking of that, I always think, so you got it out there, and then you think about how do you take your top 5 and relate them to what those body parts, your hands and your feet and your head, right? How does that fit in? So, right, how do you correlate your top 5, and how would you fit that in? And so you can get and then tell your neighbor, right? Think about that, turn to your neighbor, and so you can get that discussion.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, because
this is I need ideation number 34 for me. I need these people.
See, this is perfect. Yeah. Once again, Jim Collison proves that he's got all 34 somewhere in his top 10. But I truly, Jim, with that point, like for you, Becky, I loved how as you introduced yourself, you're talking about the packaging of your talents, that achiever and arranger are kind of a package. The belief and connectedness are a package. The learner is kind of the foundation for all of those. But like the learner is your head.
Totally.
Your achiever and your arranger are your hands that you're dealing with. Your belief and your connectedness are your feet that ground you.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful analogy. And Jim, I love that advice because you really could think about, and it just even helps, Becky, you mentioned one of the hardest things to do as we coach people is to get them just to remember their top 5.
Yeah, that's true.
Better than, on my index card, I might have that and it kind of gets it ingrained in my head. But what if I labeled each of those star points as one of my strengths? That also gives like you said, when you encompass not just the intellectual but the physicality to the learning and the concept. If I'm thinking my learner, oh yeah, arranger, achiever, that it begins to help make it easier for people to not only remember but think about how they use those talents.
Yeah.
What if you took the values cards, right, and then you said you picked 2 of those or 1 of those value cards, and that becomes, right, the center of the star, right? And so you can say my top 5 are driven by these or this value.
Like the heart.
Sort of. Yeah. No, right on. It becomes the heart of the star, and so you can have that exercise where you've got those cards on the table and have folks go through it and whittle it down to 3, bring it down to 1. What's your single value? That's the heart of the star.
Totally.
Wow, there we go.
I love it. We have all these exercises coming right out of here.
There you go. Brand new stuff all the time.
That's awesome.
Any other tips or techniques that you want to share? And then I think we probably need to make some room. Jim may have some questions coming in too.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I've been thinking about. I think, so, let's see, one's more of an activity and the other, okay, I'll save my, okay, if we have time at the end, I'll save my singing activity, okay? And then everyone will get to hear me sing, and it's not a really pretty thing, but it's one of the things that I do that has to do with energy. So, but I think I started emailing people in the coaching directory. Just to say, like, because this is connectedness driving me to do these things, right? Just to say, what are your pain points in your coaching business or in your coaching? Because not everyone has their own business, right? But almost to the person, and I didn't get through everybody. I mean, just like really only like the first. I probably got through A before I had a baby 6 months ago, and things changed. And they almost to the person said the hardest part for me is getting business. Like, where do I drum up clients? And then once I have the client, like, what do I actually offer them and put together that is sustainable? Like that has, it's not just like a drop in, but rather creating some connection. And I don't have brilliant ideas about it. I just have, I've just been trying to kind of march along that way. Because it's more than the coaching side of things that makes us successful as coaches and consultants and growth and success mavens, right? It's the business side of things. It's, okay, how do I put a package together? How do I put a proposal or a contract together? What are my productivity tools that I use? It can be kind of lonely especially as a solopreneur, right? You're out there, you're kind of doing your thing, you kind of know other people are doing it, but you don't know what they're doing. You don't know if you should be competing with them or if you should be like collaborating with them, and what does that look like? And I think the things that I've been learning over the last couple of years is not to be scared of collaboration at all. I mean, there have been 12.3 million people who have taken the StrengthsFinder assessment and counting, right? There are, but you talk to the person next to you and they've never heard of it. So there's plenty of opportunity, right, for everybody. We all have different niches, and even if you're in the same niche, there's still plenty of people. So in terms of an actual practical analytical, question asker, there's plenty of that. But it creates momentum, it creates dialogue, it creates something that you can't have on your own. I mean, even just this conversation right here, we created from one thing from my failure to a little crazy stretching exercise to now all of a sudden we have a way to have people remember their strengths more because they're walking around with them on their hands and their head and their feet, and that's about collaboration. And so I did a Gallup blog post about this, but Aaron Passons and I started a strengths network here in San Diego. I know there's a lot of meetups that are happening around the country and around the world now. Tessa Dodge was instrumental in helping have the ideas behind what it looks like to bring people together under strengths, and it's all about collaboration. And I have competition number 6. So there is definitely like a little in me, when I was like, oh, it's all about like kumbaya. It's like, yeah, connectedness might say that, but competition's like, yeah, but if someone's gonna have the business, I want it, So I come from that. I come from that lens as well. But the connection is so much more valuable than that. You know, I can compare myself to my peers. That helps me, you know, get better. But there's so many things that I incorporate into my trainings that I didn't learn myself. You know, and that's again this knowing your bottom as well. Like ideation is not up there for me, so just coming up with things is not my talent. I can make things better. I can put ideas together, but the initial, not really, that's not my strong point.
Right.
And so I encourage, it sounds like so basic, but I encourage authentic collaboration where you, and not just like, what can I get from you? Because I've had people, you know, email me, and so it's like, I know that they're just trying to get something from me, but rather, what can I give, and how can we give together? And I think that's where I felt the most success in terms of kind of helping with business and kind of getting through those lonely parts as a solopreneur.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. And I love the idea of those meetups, not only as an opportunity to collaborate with other coaches or strengths fanatics that might be out there, but I think it can also be a spot to grow your business, whether it's through those people or some of those folks may show up. It's like, I'm interested in strengths for my company or for my business. I'm going to come to this thing and see who's there, and oh, wow, you're doing something really powerful. I'm going to hire you.
Right.
So good.
Yeah, and it's about the referral network. I mean, there are very successful people out there that want to have good coaches in their back pocket that they can refer out to. So connecting with those people especially is important when you're starting out. The other thing I did was I said I need to read business books. Of course, Lerner would say that, right? But I need to continue to fuel myself with ideas and with just kind of snippets of wisdom and leadership and business management. And so I started a business book club mastermind group where we meet like every couple months, and it's all just virtual. And right now it's literally just friends. It's not all coaches. It's people who are in all sorts of different businesses. But when thinking back through the last couple of years of what have been some of those pivotal moments and things I can recommend as like a tip and technique is connect with people to get advice and to get their feedback. And you know, for us, reading a book has been helpful because we have like a topic, and then we kind of go from there into how all of our businesses are doing. So we just met on Wednesday night, and it's just another reminder, like, yeah, that's one of the things that's really made me successful up to this point.
You know, one of the activities I led in the Coaching for Entrepreneurial Talent session in Washington, D.C. this week was about those relationship networks and how important it is for an entrepreneur to build those. I think about, you know, as a lot of our coaches are solopreneurs like you're talking about, and it's important to have the people that you learn from, people you admire, people that you think of as mentors. It's important. I'm wondering if you have someone that coaches you around your strengths, you know, that it's good sometimes to get someone else to remind us of our strengths, so that you have some subject matter experts. So I love that you are reminding people they need to branch out, and to build their business, it isn't just going to those places and doing those things that a network of possible business, but learning from others, working on friendships. Things can blossom in some of the most unusual places and ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And just having people around that speak the same language and are excited about it. You know, we can feel pretty nerdy and kind of geeked out on this stuff. So it's nice when you can just like be in a comfortable space where you're like, oh my gosh, totally you're a ranger. And like people are like, oh yeah, and as opposed to like, you are driving me bananas. Why do you keep talking about this Ranger thing? You know, it's helpful to have that support as well.
Good. Yeah. Jim, anything that people are wanting us to ask Becky that you've got coming in?
Yeah, normally we mention this at the end, but since we're talking about meetups, let me bring it in now as it's appropriate. You know, we have some 30 global meetups going on right now. If you want to know, if you might be listening and like, is there a meetup going on in my city? Go to coaching.gallup.com and look for the meetup tab. And these are open public meetups all going. We are covering most of the continents now. We need Africa, so maybe somebody in South Africa would be willing to start one there as well. But we'd love 100. So Becky, we're trying, as we get bigger, we're trying to get smaller, right?
Yeah.
So we need 100. So if it's not in your city, contact me directly. Just send me an email, Jim_Collison@gallup.com. I've got a whole packet we'll put together for you and a call to help you get started. So love to have you do that if you get that started for us. So that's what we're doing to spur on local in-person meetups around the world. So we want 100 by the end of the year. I'm a little bit behind. Some people are going to need to help me catch up. So we did have a question from chat. So Chinarut asked the question. He said he's interested in hearing your experience with StrengthsFinder in healthcare orgs, in that if you are applying the well-being 5 principles. So that's question 1. And then a follow-up question to it is, are there specific types of healthcare orgs that resonate better with strengths than others in your experience?
Hi, Chinarut. Nice to have your question. I've seen you around the strengths world, so thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Healthcare is my background, and like I said, I'm kind of listed very niche-oriented on the Gallup coaching site. So people so far have been reaching out to me, and they already have an interest. So that's been great. I have not incorporated Wellbeing 5. I haven't had the extended relationship that I think when they come from a StrengthsFinder perspective, they really want unpack this for me. What is StrengthsFinder? How can we use it? They usually have some pretty specific goals. There's not some organizations have in healthcare have money, but there's not tons of money in at least the places that have been reaching out to us, and because they're kind of more they're smaller. It's the HR or the sales training organizations Care Fusion, but they're huge and they just merged with BD, but the tiny little spot that hired me doesn't have a huge training budget. And so they're looking for kind of the most bang for their buck for managers or for their team. They have specific goals. So I haven't been able to use Wellbeing 5, though I love the well-being concept. I listened to one of Heather's presentations on that when we were at the women's conference in Irvine, and I wish people would sign up in droves, but so far I haven't seen that.
Any sweet spot in the space when we think of healthcare? Are there some verticals that are accepting it better or doing it more than other verticals?
Sales so far seems to be pretty strong. I think people, sales has a lot of teams. There's reps that they manage. I've worked with a lot of regional managers, so maybe even are managing remotely. How do I understand these people and get the most out of them? So I'd say kind of that sales, medical device. I know you guys work a lot with J&J, that type of thing. The most recent one I came across was from the Joint Commission, so they're the accreditors of hospitals. Mm-hmm. So it really can come from anywhere, but the sales oriented are people that are just kind of motivated to kind of get some tools, how can we do this better? So that so far that's been a little bit of a niche or a trend.
And that makes sense. I was corrected. We do have a meetup going on. I just didn't know about it. We have one going on in South Africa. So there you go. Ask and you shall receive. They need to send me that information so we can get that on the meetup page so we know about it.
See, it's good. You're one closer to the goal.
We are. And I have a feeling actually twice as many meetups are going on than we are promoting. True. And so if you're listening to this and you have a meetup going on, we'd love to get it on our meetup page. 1, so we can celebrate it, right? 2, we can help promote it in your area. Mm-hmm. I have dozens of people who come to that page every single day looking for meetups, and so get those in there. Becky, let me ask you one final question from me. And if we had a coach or we had a person who was thinking about becoming a coach, they're kind of on the fence about it. It's kind of like, do I take the training? Do I not? Do I get certified? Do I not? As a coach, you've been doing this for a while. You've got great energy. What would you tell them that might push them off the fence?
Yeah, I had someone. So the other day, I posted a resource that I made on the Gallup Called to Coach Facebook page, and it got a lot of great response. And I was able to. It was fun for me because I got to connect with people. And one person asked me that, I don't know, should I do it? I've been looking around. What should I do? And I really think it depends on where you're at, and so I don't want to say, yeah, everyone should do it, it's awesome, because that's my lens and my perspective. I had a fabulous time. I learned so much. I would not be where I am but for the Gallup coaching certification. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have the credibility. I wouldn't have the knowledge. The knowledge base that I got, and I know a lot of people do the accelerated program. I was getting my feet wet, and so was Gallup at the time of how they were offering it, and so I took the 3 individual courses. I thought that was fantastic because not only did I meet different people every single time, which I now have network connections from each of those classes that are either mentoring me or I'm connected with or we're working together. But also, I got to think, and maybe this is intellection, right, for me, but I got to think in between and use it and experiment and coach people in between to say, okay, what do I not know? What do I need to know? And so by the time I got to that coaching for individual performance course, I knew the themes well, and that just kind of solidified things. So for me, it's been really valuable, and I really have gotten hits. We were talking about this earlier. I have gotten hits off the Gallup coaching directory. I think there's some value there. I didn't recommend that my friend Bob, who is a retired executive, go through the course. I just felt like he's offering something different. Maybe he can partner with me to do the strength stuff, and he offers this like depth of experience. So, and I know maybe there's some executives out there, retired executives, that would love it. But for him, it was like, well, I think you have a different level of credibility. But for most people, I would say, yeah, like go get educated in these strengths, because if it's impacted you, you know that it can impact other people as you're able to help them uncover it and unwrap it and interpret it and apply it to themselves and others in their everyday lives. I love,
Becky, it's kind of like full circle with you. We really, it may have started at the kitchen table with your husband, and I'm sure it comes back every day at the kitchen table with your husband and now 3 beautiful children, and just even as a parent, how that wisdom around strengths helps you parent better and see through that lens. But just even having that lens of what's really right for your clients and for your colleagues and the people that you might collaborate with. It's really powerful to see how kind of you can help everybody go to their own kitchen table every day, a little more clear about who they are, a little more confident about how they can leverage the best parts of who they are, to be at their very best, and to really be happy with how they spend their days. From kitchen table all the way out into the community and back again, at the end of the day, back to the kitchen table. I think it's a neat way to think about the impact that you're having for people. Yeah. So thank you for joining us again. It's great to hear your insights and your tips and your techniques, and I'm sure many people have just gotten some nuggets to take away and begin applying and think about, and I'm sure your connectedness thinks about what's the ripple effect of you sharing a couple of those ideas today. How many other lives will that touch? So I appreciate your mavenly generosity today. Jim, a couple of things that I was thinking about, as you talk about meetups, I appreciate your going there. And I also think about, Becky, you talked about the value for you personally in the 3 unique segments. A lot of our traffic these days is around the accelerated program. But we do have all of those courses. If you go to our webpage, all those courses are coming up, in September. We have accelerated programs taking place in London, Sydney, Washington, D.C., Hong Kong, Bangalore, and Berlin. That's just in the month of September. And of course, there's always something cooking here in Omaha and in our Chicago office and our Irvine office. So if you are interested in just getting the journey started, perhaps, September 9th and 10th in Atlanta is a successful strengths coaching course. And then in Omaha and DC in October, we've got that first phase of the strengths coaching journey available. So you might try the first 2 days if you're thinking about it. But you can always go to Gallup-Strengthscenter.com to look at what are the current offerings. We also, Becky, you talked a lot about working with managers and yourself as a manager, how impactful it was to you and your team to begin looking at them through the lens of strengths. Our High Performance Manager course is a course that's being offered both inside of clients but also in a very open enrollment public kind of way. So our city centers are hosting that high performance manager course that maybe people would be interested in. So with that, I want to say thank you very much. Great inspiration, great tools and techniques, great pivotal moments that you've created for people. And I'm excited as you continue to grow in your practice of strengths to continue to hear great stories coming your way. And thank you for being a strong collaborator on those meetups in the San Diego area.
Well, thank you. It's been fun to be here.
Anything else for us?
Yeah, Becky, thanks again. We wouldn't have had the star exercise in there if you hadn't come on again.
That's right.
We did not talk about that in the first take.
This is all meant to be. I know. It cannot.
Very good. I'm basically just trying to cover for my mistake. We will remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources that are available at the Gallup-Strengths Center. Heather mentioned one of those. Coach's Directory is out there as well, as you can purchase multiple codes out there if you want to do that as well. That's just Gallup-StrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions and comments via email, coaching@gallup.com. As I mentioned before, you can catch the recorded audio and downloadable video and audio as well. Plus all the links to our Facebook and YouTube page there on a Coach's Directory, coaching, or the Coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com. If you have an idea for a blog post, we are open to that, and we're interviewing for guest writers. So if you send us an email, again, that coaching@gallup.com, put guest blogger in the subject line. We'll get right back to you as we put you in for an interview with that. We also have those meetups going on, so don't forget to head out to the page to get that done. And we want to thank everyone for joining us today. Becky, great session. And if you enjoyed it, please share it, and we look forward to the next Call to Coach. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.